WAOH is brought to you in part by Jumpstart Video, online at jumpstartvideo.com.
Hello everyone, and I get to speak with Renee Molnar. She is another Akron Public School board candidate, and I'm excited to speak with her. So how are you, Renee?
Hi, wonderful, thank you.
So glad that you're here. Go ahead and just start with telling us a little bit about you.
Sure, so my name is Renee Molnar, and just about every aspect of my life, personal, social, and even my professional life is intertwined with the schools.
Okay.
So that is why I am running for school board.
Yeah, I love that. Well, tell us a little bit more about yourself, just so
Sure.
we can get to know you.
So I started my career in education a little over 15 years ago. I was a middle school math teacher, and I always knew that I wanted to be a teacher. I love helping students learn. That's why I wanted to do math, because that moment when students really understand something, when that light bulb turns on, especially if it's something that they've had trouble understanding, like I live for that moment. But I found out when I was a classroom teacher that being a teacher is really hard. There are a lot of barriers to learning that occur outside of the classroom that trickle into your classroom and affect the learning environment. And sometimes it felt like there was a fire in the back of my classroom, just this metaphorical fire that we just had to pretend wasn't there and keep teaching anyways. So that's why I went back to school to get my master's degree, and I focused on educational foundations. And there I really learned about the historical policy and other elements that kind of contributed to that metaphorical, I guess, policy fire, and also a lot of the things that were relevant and happening currently in students' lives that were contributing to that fire and barriers to learning. And I became an instructional coach, and I tried to help other teachers, rearrange their classrooms and use different learning methods to teach despite the metaphorical policy fire. But I'm not the kind of person that just wants to ignore a problem.
Sure.
So I went back to school again, got a PhD in urban education, specializing in education policy, and that's what I do now. I look at policy implementation, I look at the various levels of state, local, and national policies and how they're intertwined and how they are forces of opportunity and exclusion for our students. And presenting at a conference, I'm at the University of Akron now. We have a conference on Friday, New Explorations in Teaching, and sharing all of our findings and strategies and the future of learning.
Okay. So what do you think is working well in education right now in APS?
I think there are a lot of initiatives that are working very well. I think the College and Career Academies is getting national attention. We have groups of educators come every year to the John S. Knight Center to learn from what we're doing with our College and Career Academies so they can use those ideas and bring them back to their districts. I think that with a district the size of Akron's, it's really nice that we can have those specializations in each of the buildings, so that way we aren't trying to use our resources in a way that, maybe every building doesn't need a planer, but we have our construction and engineering and they can have the best equipment there, and then the other buildings might have an MRI machine or whatever they need for their specialization. So I think that that is a really great opportunity to give our students access to the best learning and the best materials and the most relevant materials to them also. Just because you go through a College and Career Academy does not necessarily mean that's going to be the career you're stuck in for the rest of your life. And I think that part of that messaging has been intimidating to some families and some students in the past. How am I going to know when I'm 12 years old what I want to do for the rest of your life? You don't, but you have knowledge, you have skills, and hopefully a certificate that you can use while you're doing the rest of your learning.
Yeah. Okay, great. What are conditions necessary for learning?
Safety. The very first most important thing. If you do not feel safe physically and emotionally, then you will not learn. Maslow before Bloom. I think that as far as the building security, that was a big issue moving just earlier this year, actually. And we have invested a lot in the physical safety and security of our buildings. And so now we have the opportunity to really invest more in emotional safety and mental health. And I know that there are new peer mediation programs and things like that that really can allow students to have the opportunities to express themselves in safe ways.
Okay, wonderful. What do you think education should look like in the future? Let's go with 10 years from now.
So, 21st century learning. We are in 2023 of 21st century learning. For so long, people have said technology is the future. Technology is the present. We are in the present. I work for online learning services at the University of Akron, and education technology is a large part of my focus in my career and bridging gaps to students. And I think that the use of technology, especially in the past few months with expanded AI and things like that, that is going to change how all jobs are done in the future. It is going to affect every single career. So I'm really excited, actually. I am currently on the Legal Policy Committee for Akron Public Schools because I am a current board member. And we started the conversation with our new Director of Technology to affect our and adapt our technology policies to talk about how students will use AI, not just blocking AI for students and for staff.
Okay.
ChatGPT, Bard, whatever program you're using can be useful for students and for staff. So how can we teach students to responsibly use AI like the internet, like a calculator, so they can be productive and successful in the future?
Sure, okay. What's your most current grassroots involvement with APS outside of your personal child or your neighborhood school?
So, personal child or neighborhood school, that is my entire life. It is difficult to separate all of those things because in my personal life, I'm at the University of Akron, so we are talking all of the time about the graduating seniors and how we can make sure that they are successful when they become students at the University of Akron. Personal child, I don't know if this counts as neighborhood school, but my kids are on soccer teams. My kids play soccer actually at Lane Field twice a week, and so there's been a lot of conversation about safety at Lane Field. This is not an APS school, this is not an APS program. But I have a group chat I was just on where we're talking about, let's see if we can get the lights turned on at the field so we can feel safer at this school. And there are hundreds of kids outside there who are trying to be kids, play soccer, do something productive.
Right.
But also when I was at the Cleveland State University, I was the Ohio coordinator of the Education Policy Fellowship Program. And so what we did there was we brought school administrators, not just from Akron, but also from other schools, mostly across Northeast Ohio, but it was the whole state. We would get people from the whole state, and we would bring them to Columbus for state board meetings, and we would take them to Washington, D.C. to visit our senators and some of the large policy think tanks. And we would then come back to Ohio and we would reflect on how those levels of policy have affected the various buildings, the various districts in similar and different ways. And Akron was always a large part. Even when Akron did not have a fellow participating that year, Akron was always a large part of that conversation, largely because of a lot of the forward-thinking policies that Akron has. So including the college and career academies, including the racism as a public health crisis, and hopefully in the future, our forward-thinking AI policies. Akron really is a leader to many other districts.
Okay. Where do you see inequity within APS, and how could you, as a school board member, address it?
So, I'm going to pause for a minute. Is that okay? Okay. I have attended every equity committee meeting since I've been a board member. I've only been a board member since May, so it's only a handful of meetings. But Dr. Carla Chapman has been an amazing resource to Akron Public Schools with its diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. just Monday, they said that so far this school year, we're on week 7, and they have trained over 600 staff on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. And I was reading through the feedback from the staff, and it was very, very meaningful and heartfelt feedback, which you don't usually get that from PD feedback, which means to me that the faculty have really appreciated what they're learning from this process. And it's also not just teachers that are receiving this. You know, we always think, oh, more teacher PD, but it's actually diverse staff, so child nutrition and other staff are also part of this. And Mrs. Whitmore, Mrs. Dreamer Whitmore has been doing a lot with the student voice initiatives and listening to the students and amplifying their voices and hearing what they want from their district. They want to be seen, valued, respected, heard. All we need to do is offer them that microphone, and they will tell us what they need. And last Friday, I was at the Community Education on Discussion where our student voice panel shared their experiences. And even our student panel was a very diverse panel. A lot of times when you think of student leaders that you're going to bring out into the public, you think of your top honors students, but we had a variety of students. We had a student who shared that she was on an IEP. We had a student that shared that she had spent a lot of time in in-school suspension. And hearing those diverse perspectives and what they said that they needed in all of the areas to improve their learning has been very, very powerful.
Okay, wonderful. Will you have a plan if a tiny minority of people work to ban books, librarians, or libraries?
So if a tiny minority of people wanted to ban books, I do not believe that it would immediately go to the board. From my understanding of the hierarchy of chain of command there, all of our curriculum and materials are chosen through our department, and it's all tied to our state standards. And so I think it would be very, very difficult for someone to say yes or no as a surprise to a book, because if it's aligned to the standards, then this is what the state is telling us that we need to teach. And then when they select the curriculum, we put that book, we share that with the public. They have a couple weeks to review that curriculum before it's approved. So I think a lot of the book banning is something that is not something that is vulnerable for Akron Public Schools. I think we also have a nice policy for the racism as a public health crisis that could also possibly prevent some of the types of books that some people would want to ban. But I feel that we are pretty safe in Akron.
Okay. All right. So do you have any background or experience with special education and or disabilities?
Yes. So when I was a classroom teacher, I had students with IEPs in my classroom every single year. So I had to monitor their learning goals and frequently sit in on IEP meetings with families. Also, in my role at the University of Akron, accessibility is something that we definitely help with for technology. So frequently something like providing extended time on tests in a more efficient way electronically, providing captions and training staff on universal design for learning. Just because there might be one student who needs captions does not mean that the whole class would not possibly benefit from captions. Because there's a variety of reasons why having that resource would be beneficial to learning. So I have a lot of experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you do to ensure that every student with disabilities would have meaningful inclusion within their school environment with peers?
So recently I actually was emailed, because I am a current board member, I was emailed by a parent with a student who she felt needed more inclusion than the student was receiving. So the student has an IEP. This student also is a member of a Sparkle cheer team. And so the Sparkle cheer team wanted game time. You know, they wanted time with the regular cheer team. They wanted game time with the football team. And so I was very excited to meet with this parent, hear her concerns, hear about the wonderful things that their cheer team did. You know, they did a summer camp like a regular cheer team. They had uniforms, they had practice, they did cheers and chants, and then bridging that communication with the athletic director and with the principal, and the cheer team has a list of games that they're going to go to. I think they got to go to homecoming. I was actually doing the kids marathon downtown. My kids were running the marathon not that same day, but they sent me pictures. I think the team got to cheer during the homecoming football game, and I think especially because her student is a senior, it was just a beautiful memory for them.
That's wonderful. So we know that you are willing to meet and discuss concerns. That was the next question with parents and advocates of special education students. So thank you for doing that. Who's responsible for education here in Akron?
Everybody. Everybody is responsible for education in Akron. Yes, we have a superintendent. Yes, we have a board. Yes, we have a governor who is trying to have more control than the governor has ever had before. But everybody is responsible because the famous saying, as go the schools, so go our city. And one of my soapboxes, if you will, is including people in the school who do not have children in the school, because that's one big difference that has occurred in Akron over the last few years is we have a lot less families with children. But just because you don't have children in the school doesn't mean you can't still go to a football game, watch a play, listen to our student panels at the round tables, and just really hear the wonderful things that they are doing, and that they've practiced really, you know, they've put a lot of time and effort into being seen.
Great. Give some words of wisdom to our APS students as we wrap up.
I really want to be inspirational here.
Whatever you say will be good.
Everyone says never give up, but I'm going to say never shut up. I'm going to say if you need something, make sure that somebody hears you, and if that person doesn't hear you, ask somebody else, tell somebody else what you need and what you deserve, because what you're saying is valuable. People say that children are the future, but really you are the students of the present. You know what's happening in your building. You know what's happening in your life. You know what you need, and it is our job to try to get that for you.
Okay. Can you share, if someone wants to contact you, can you share how they could contact you? Do you have a website that they could check out?
Yes, I have a website. It's just my name, ReneeMolnar.com. I also have a Facebook, Renee Molnar for Akron School Board, and my email, contact information, cell phone are on all of those. And I don't have a fancy web team, so if there's something not on either of those pages that you think should be on those pages, email me that too. I'll whip up a page.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Renee, for being here and answering these questions for our community. Appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned because we will have more candidates coming up.